Hello and welcome, everybody, as we are here for the 2020 Season 2 North American Contenders Trials. I am Richrad here with the amazing Kenobi. Kenobi, we have so much starting this week off and starting it off right. I'm excited to be here, and I'm hoping you are as well, my friend.
Definitely very excited to be here with you, Rich. And we do have, like you mentioned, a banger of a match to start off with between two of these teams. We have Uprising Academy versus Square One. I think probably one of the better matchups that we're going to be seeing throughout the entirety of these contenders trials so far. Differences in both of the teams recently made to them. So we're going to get to see them very much for the first time, both of these teams. I can't wait to see what they bring to the table.
I can't either. And I mean, honestly, we've got this whole week worth of just development and growth to see all these teams going from, just reinforcing what they're going to be just demonstrating over this whole week. Again, it's Monday through Friday, all of this week, 6 p.m., starting at Eastern time. So you can come back every day this week and get some amazing contenders trials. Just want to throw that out
Yeah.
there. I mean,
I
it
mean,
might not be myself and Kenobi, but we still got a lot for you.
you thought it was over with the Summer Showdown being down? No, 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 no. There's still much more Overwatch to be played as we start basically the start of the journey of the path to pro towards the NA and EU contenders. And here on NA, like I mentioned, we do have these two teams, Uprising and Square One, making some additions to their team coming from their first season in NA contenders. And when I look at my notes over here, I see a lot of names that if you have watched contenders and you're a contender stalwart like me and Rich are, you know a lot of these names. You know Milky Man, back in 2018 season 3 on Giganti winning EU contenders, Tap coming in way
Mhm.
fast, someone who has been in Europe and has been in contenders for almost the longest of times. It feels like I see their name popping up incredibly often. And a lot of these names are really things that I'm excited to see and how they mesh with these new teammates that they're going to have and get towards going to that contenders tournament at the end of the month.
Well, and to even build on top of just, these individuals and players that are hopping into these teams and being rotated in and out, it's also just really seeing how meta has switched and adjusted and what
Yep.
we see now coming out, especially with the Genji and even in some,
Yeah.
visibility with, EU where there's potentially a little bit of sprinkling of May and Arisa that's there as well. There's so much that we're going to see, I think, going into this week over the course of these 5 days that it's going to be really interesting to see how it develops, especially with the recent patch that came out just over a week ago.
The patch, I think, is the most important thing as to why we're seeing a little bit of the change and why there's possibly a little bit more May involved than there is Genji.
Mhm.
Genji, before this, and if you were watching Summer Showdown yesterday, Genji is almost raid boss esque when he has that armor pack from Brigitte that gives him the extra armor and overheal. Brigitte no longer has that on this patch, so now Genji falls off a little bit in terms of his overpoweredness. I would say he's still very good, still can do a good amount of things with just the raw damage that he has and the output, but he's not as strong as he was when Brigitte could basically just give him that armor pack and make him a raid boss that could go in, get out very safely, charge up that ultimate. Now you have to play a little bit more safely if you're the Genji and if you're the entirety of the team playing around that character.
You got to get those armor platings. You got to make sure that you've got all your fortification, but they're just starting to be stripped away a little here without that double stack. But that's also some of the thing that we're looking at in the support lineup too, is how that support dynamic is going to have to adjust to this, since you no longer can rely so heavily making that raid boss of a Genji just from the Brigitte alone.
And I mean, Brigitte still, I think, is very strong. She's not as strong as when she was when she could give overheal, but still, you do have armor pack, which is very good in terms of keeping your divers alive when they want to go
Mhm.
in to those situations, like Genji likes to do, where he's dashing into halt combos. And I think you mentioned
Yes.
it. Talking about Genji is probably one of the is the most important person I would say on the current in the current meta right now because if you've seen the difference between having a good Genji and having a bad Genji,
Mhm.
usually the team with the better Genji wins 9 times out of 10. So for both of these teams, I'm looking out for which team is gonna opt into playing that Genji, which team is gonna play it a little bit better, farm up those Dragon Blades, where it's the most important ultimate in terms of being able to force out other ultimates from the enemy team, other cooldowns. And also, Genji's just a very flashy and fun character to watch, so I hope we see a lot of cool Dragon Blades, a lot of cool ultimates coming out from both these teams, and with the players that I see already for Square One and for Uprising, I think it's definitely a possibility.
And as these doors open onto downtown Busan, a very wide open and vertical space to utilize, and it will actually be one Genji coming out from Square One, who's already taken that side back position. High ground going to be maintained by Wayfast with the Ash play. That Dynamite getting some decent damage, but has a longer cooldown since its recent patch, so it's not going to be able to develop as much of the ultimate charge as quickly. With that follow through, the rotation comes out. False getting aggressed on by Square One, doing a stellar job sticking together, some decent damage coming out by False, but it's really just an extended skirmish until this transition to the point.
Both of these teams playing incredibly slow, Rich, and you're going to be looking up for that Genji Blade at 60%, trying to farm up to that before the fight actually starts.
And with the fight still continuing to extend, it's really just looking, like you said, for that domino effect. The amplification matrix going to come out for the extra boosted damage by Uprising. You've got the Deflect King mitigating a lot, and the Flux by False getting the double here in just conjunction with everyone else's position around that center point is critical.
Well, that's one way to win a fight, Rich, with a huge Gravitic Flux coming out from False. As you can see, Brute didn't even get to 80% to his yet, so False already showing incredible dominance on this Sigma, getting that Gravitic Flux much faster than his counterpart in Square One, and now this is firmly in the control right now of Uprising Academy. There is the Dragon Blade, though, on the other side from King.
There's a nice flank going to come out by Tap in the back, getting some decent damage onto the support line, causing a lot of harass, but does get knocked back by the Flay as Angelic leads with the rally. Finally reducing it out now, no longer having it. Immortality Field as well with the Dragon Blade, attempting to get some decent value, and does get one on the front along with the Immortality Field, opening up that damage from Square One to look to take this back.
Wayfast caught a little bit out of position there. Rich wasn't in the area for that Immortality Field to save him from the Dragon Blade from King, and once that hit scan option goes down, a lot of the damage is lost from Uprising Academy's side, and Square One, with the advantage that they also had having that Brigitte rally armor on all of them, helps them win that fight and stop the bleeding a little bit. But Uprising Academy getting 60%, a pretty nice haul for them. But now it's going to be a little bit of an interesting situation when we come into this next fight, because Milky Man has the supercharger available, but on the other side, Dredro's got that rally.
And you've got the Supercharger and the Flux committed. Spee even as well with the Bob placement in the back. That is an utter elimination from Uprising. And that's going to be an easy cleanup by a lot of ultimates used there, to be fair.
Very expensive fight from Square One there. Luckily, they were able to force out some ultimates from Uprising at the same time, so it's not the worst case scenario for them. Like, Dredro doesn't have his rally anymore in a lost fight. Tap doesn't have his Pulse Bomb, and Krandop doesn't have his Supercharger. So Square One really here equalizes the battlefield a little bit with the ultimate economy, as we see people are just trying to 1v1 on the point. We'll see what happens.
And while that's happening on the point, there's still some decent rotation underneath that passageway. You can see King in along with the Tracer play by Tap, but there is still, despite that separation of the individual from both teams, Square One is really dominating in this open space.
And I love that from Ultraviolet, having the presence of mind to know Krandop is a little bit too over-aggressive there, hits that window, and the Orisa just vanishes from the face of the earth. And Square One, since losing that first fight, Rich, and losing that 60%, have been in the driver's seat for all of this now, and Dragon Blade is very close for them.
Amplification Matrix to lead, will get some decent damage to maybe get a pick in the back onto King, who, like you said, is nearing that Dragon Blade, which is going to be critical in these final moments. 15 seconds remaining as it approaches that 100%. Dragon Blade comes out, Flux in the front and the backside from False to equalize against this oppressive team. King getting the double, Pulse Bomb to try and level the playing field with the Pulse Bomb. This is quite a back and forth, and False, with that side position on the Flux, really, I think, caught Square One off guard and is going to allow the switch back in the overtime of 99 from Square One.
Very, very close fight there, Rich, from both sides. King almost made it happen with that Dragon Blade, but a really nice Gravitic Flux from False sections off the rest of the enemy, rest of Square One from helping King in any way possible, having to use that Immortality Field to help the rest of the team instead of helping King with that Dragon Blade. He goes down, and then Uprising Academy has has a numbers advantage, and Rich, with 70%, 80% right now for Uprising Academy, this is going to be the last fight. Rally committed from Angelic here. They have the advantage with the sustain. Something has to give right now for Uprising.
Yes, indeed, taking the high ground with that extra armor to drop down and potentially collapse onto these two tanks in the corner. Bob gets dropped into the side position, but that immortality is there for a brief moment. A rotation around the upstairs position of Uprising, but it's instantly taken away by Square One, and Wayfast rotating onto this Widow. Finding some sightlines in the back, but going into this double shield is absolutely difficult to find a decent angle. With the still applied pressure in the back, though, into that amplification matrix to compete against the bat, but he does get the kill. Ultraviolet with the extra bonus damage. Off in the backside. Supercharger to attempt a second time in this fight with Uprising against Square One. The Flux with the immortality field.
The blade!
But the blade absolutely melting. All that remained with the immortality field gone. King looks to sweep through with Brute's assistance, and that's going to be Square One able to lay the foundation in this first map on Busan.
Oh my god, Rich, if this is what we have to look forward to for the rest of the series, this is going to be a banger. That last fight was completely nuts. I mean, Wayfast trying to take the 1v1 against a Baptiste with Window, the absolute just mental fortitude to be able to do that. And then they lost him, but then King, they played slow enough to where they're able to get back their ultimates. They're very important ones. Supercharger comes in from Krandop. Very well played from Square One at the end, where it looked like they were in a position where it was very easy for them to lose that, but they had stuck to their guns. King comes out with a huge blade, and they're able to clean up. And the one team that uses Genji, Rich, is the team that comes out on top for that round. As we go to this other map now, Tap's still going to be sticking with the Tracer, and King actually going to match him. But Wayfast says, Speed, get out of my screen. You're not even here, my friend. You're going back to spawn. Square One, or Uprising Academy takes a very early lead.
Absolutely fast that was in the way of the Widow. I tried to make that work, because you see still some sight lines in the back.
I respect
I know, I tried to use my poetic side that I've had from school, but well, we'll see. Hits and misses. As you got Wayfast still looking for that sight line outside, looking to almost take down that shot onto Ultraviolet. Taps now going to get very, very aggressive as well on this Widow, and it's going to be both sides really trying to play that position.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be up to King and Tap to see who can cause the most damage and just be a pest to the other Widowmakers here. But on the point, the rest of the four members are going to just brawl, and we'll see who comes out ahead here. Immortality Field already forced from Uprising Academy and Square One, but Wayfast kills Speed.
Absolutely, and the follow-through coming out by Tap, and it is going to be a cleanup here for Uprising. Tap at least just kind of playing with his food a little bit, even though there's a nice Harmony Orb from the Zenyatta cross wave from Ultraviolet, but can't manage to survive from the Orisa gun, and it will be Uprising taking this point first.
And I think this specific map of Shrine is really good for Uprising in specific because they do have Wayfast, who is a legacy Widowmaker player, has a very good Widowmaker. As you can see, Spee not even bothering to go into the Widow 1v1, opting for the Ashe instead to add a more utility to his team instead of just losing 1v1s constantly against Wayfast. So Wayfast already putting his impact on the game, not only through the kill feed, but forcing Square One to play something they might not want to be playing at a specific point.
Absolutely, and you want to play something confident going into this, especially when you know how strong Wayfast is, and False gonna attempt this high ground position with the Sigma, finding a flank and adjusting the shield placement for Square One, and the fact that that 2-kill comes out early onto Square One with Wayfast leading the way, finding another, and despite this double shield, Wayfast is still getting so much value.
He hasn't let Speed play the game entirely. Every single time Spee has been in the kill feed, it's been on the opposite end of a headshot or a shot from Wayfast. He has complete domination of every single sightline on this map now, Rich. If Spee or if King or if anyone steps out of cover from one of those double shields, which sometimes you're going to have to do if you're not in the right position, their heads are going off. Just clean off. He's taking them off. He's taking them with him. He's taking them back to put him on, put him on the necklace. You know those like video games where they had the skulls as necklaces?
Yeah, it's kind of like where you keep teeth of your, I don't know, that's gonna be weird. I totally took that a step further. As Taps in the meanwhile is gonna look for some great headshots here with that full clip, but playing still a little bit hesitant, not wanting to dive in too much, with Milky Way gonna lead the way up front. Milkman having that supercharger for the extra boosted damage to transition onto the drum. Crossfire here with the support and Wavefast playing so far back, adjusting and acclimating to how far Square One is pushed in. The Transcendence has to be forced out near this point as False manages this high drum position with Kinetic Grasp, mitigating still consistent damage and flanking and finding some serious value. Spree, though, along with that Discord Orb from Ultra, is giving this opportunity for Square One to take this back, and despite how well Uprising rotated, Square One still found value.
Yeah, Spree finally comes alive on this Ashe, is able to take out Tap very early in that fight, and Square One is able to recapture this point finally. Now have to fight up against a really high battle, though, of that 99%. Luckily enough for them, they are going to have Bob, which is going to be able to stall this a little bit longer whenever Uprising Academy decides to go in, because Uprising Academy really doesn't have an ult economy to work with, Rich. They have to win this through sheer mechanical skill, and with the ult that Square One are going to have, it's going to be very difficult to do so.
Absolutely difficult, but there is not enough time here to try and force out a few ultimates and generate a few of their own. Maintaining that high ground drum position, Uprising plays this corner very well. Spree still getting a decent amount of ticking damage with that Dynamite, though, and a Hull pulls a few high just over the shield. Bob going to be committed to this, knowing that that extra player is going to just dip. Wow, and what a flick of the gun to get that shot onto Tap. That will start to be a domino effect here onto Uprise, and it's a cleanup here for King.
And that was only off the back of 2 ultimates, Rich, from Square One. They used the Bob and they used the Amplification Matrix, but they're still in the driver's seat when it comes to that ultimate charge. Milky Man's going to have his supercharger way ahead of Crandop, and with 66%, Rich, Uprising gets maybe 1 or 2 more shots at this. Tap has to make something happen, or False with this Gravitic Flux for Uprising Academy to reclaim control of this game.
Ball's gonna come out. Is there the side position with a pulse bomb? Comes out a little bit uneasy there. Not as organized as Uprising would have liked, but the Flux tries to compete. It's going to be extremely difficult as King with the blade once again demonstrates the ferocity and intensity of that blade and will clean up. This is now only a few seconds remaining if anyone can even touch the point. And as you said, way fast. Definitely just looking to survive through all of that. The supercharge is going to be forced out here, Kenobi.
I mean, it's going to be very difficult right now for Square One or for Uprising Academy to come into this. King is just melting people with that Genji, takes 3 down, and this is a very nice win for Square One. Coming back from the position, Rich, where when we looked at the start of that map, I would never have expected Square One to win that. Wayfast was on fire completely. It seemed like Uprising had a chokehold on the game, and then Square One comes back with some really nice patient play from that 0% to basically the 99% where they won. There was only about 3 fights altogether that they were able to take for Uprising. That was very well played from Square One, very patient play, and the Genji comes out on top. I mean, we've been talking about Genji a lot, and we didn't see it at all from Uprising whatsoever. Not to say that Tap and Wayfast didn't play well in their own right, but Genji, man, Genji is super OP right now.
It really, really is. And you made the comment earlier, if you see a Genji v Genji, you know, the better Genji with timing and perseverance manages to get 9 times out of 10 more value and the fight. And in this case, when you don't have a Genji to face off against it well, you just kind of get a 10 out of 10.
I mean, hey, if there's no Genji on the other side, then it's a battle versus the Tracer v Genji, and you play those a little bit differently. And Pulse Bomb, while it is a very good ultimate in its own right, there is things like the Immortality Field. I mean, you saw it in that last fight where I said Tap needed to make something happen with his Pulse Bomb. He hits a nice one, but Immortality Field is right there, ready and waiting. And once that goes down, there's no one else to dive onto the back line like there is when there's a Genji. And if Genji's already blading, he can just slice through that Immortality Field and kill it.
Absolutely. And it's exciting to still see it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing if Uprising is going to adopt into this to make the decision that they've acknowledged this type of value. It's still relevant when used mechanically. It's going to be interesting now going into Blizzard World to see if that Genji play mirrored is going to be something of relevancy.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because Tap, I know him back from when I was from EU when he was playing like Pharah a lot. I wonder if he does have a Genji available in his back pocket. Based on what I saw on Busan,
Mhm.
I'm not sure that they do. As I say that, obviously, Uprising is going to show Genji, so cast your
Mhm.
curse already. So Tap does have a Genji available and wanting to be able to play it. And the thing, Rich, that we have to mention as well is this is a best 2 out of 3, right? This is first to
Mhm.
2, and
Yeah.
Square One is in the driver's seat completely right now. If they win this Blizzard World, they are going to take a very nice first week victory or first day victory for
Mhm.
themselves. And I think it'd be well earned, especially after what we saw in Busan.
Oh, for sure, and you're setting the bar right out of the get-go.
Mhm.
You've got yourself this confident play, you're still utilizing your strengths, you're demonstrating your ability to play Genji, which is still a very relevant pick as we're most likely gonna see probably through the majority of this week. As I said, we're gonna have all 5 days, and we're probably gonna see a lot of
Five, four, three, one. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
be a day of Overwatch without some technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. I am Richrad here with Kenobi. As we come in, we swap sides. Attack and defense has changed. And now we have Uprising Academy on the attacking side with Square One on the defensive, Kenobi.
And the interesting thing that you can see, Rich, is that Square One got full health. And Uprising Academy, they were playing Genji. Tap looks pretty good at Genji, so it makes me question as to why on Busan we didn't see a lot of it. But here we're going to be seeing mirror compositions for both of these teams, except for the interesting fact that there is Ultraviolet on the Ana. So probably going to be trying to farm up towards that Nano as fast as possible, give King a little bit more resources to deal with, but over the break, I'm not so sure that's the best case scenario. You don't have a lot of time on defense here, Rich.
No, not at all. And the fact that you're going to try and counter how well Tap was on the Dragon Blade with a Nano Blade of yourself, there's a nice pick, though, despite that extra focus in trying to generate the blade on the front side. Double kill coming out from King. And this is going to be a nice hold, getting a decent ultimate charge for that side of Square One, and some nice staggers as well.
And it's really good that they win that fight, actually, Rich, because now we're at the position where Ultraviolet is going to be able to get that Nano. And Nano Blade, still a very potent combination that we've seen throughout the entirety of Overwatch since Ana has become a character. So for Uprising, they're going to have to make some more eco pushes, try and force out that Nano. If you lose, it's not the biggest of deals. You still have 2 minutes and 40 seconds to work.
Absolutely, and with that 2 minutes and 40 seconds, there's a contest on this high ground rotating up near where that Griffin roller coaster is. There's actually going to be a brief pause here between the two of these teams for the time being. And I mean, we touched on it a little bit because we came right back in after the technical difficulty. But while you were not able to see it, Tap was absolutely demonstrating some serious Genji play, and we can elaborate that a little bit further. Again, we know that you didn't get too much of the vision of it, but it was really just being able to manage this ebb and flow of going in and out around the corner, utilizing an immortality field that was coming out from Aztac, giving so much value to counter how Square One was maneuvering around that corner.
As well as you didn't see this, but a lot of the time it was Tap who had the advantage when it came to the Dragon Blade charge. And Dragon Blade is one of those ultimates that can win you fights by itself. And we saw Tap do that a lot on that defense for Uprising. So the thing I liked about what they were doing was Crandop a lot of time was getting these fat ultimates, or fat ultimates. I said halts. Whoopsie. Fat halt.
Ultimates?
Ultimates is like what happens when you combo a halt and an ultimate, maybe. We can say that. And I can spare my blushes a little bit. But Tap, I mean, his coordination with Crandop and those halts was very good, as we're going to be going back into game very soon here, Rich. And we see Square One defending again. Nano is available now for Ultraviolet. So Nano, the blade is not quite there, but I think at this point, with Genji and how strong he is, you can just slap the Nano on the Genji regardless, and he's going to do a lot of damage anyways.
Absolutely, and then even if you get the start of the blade and not the tail end of it, it's still very critical. Great bio-nade, beautifully landed onto Uprising Academy, and that is a swift follow-through. And the blade's committed here, though. I think that's a little bit of an overzealous use in that.
It possibly is, because maybe he just saw the whites of everyone's eyes and he's like, oh, this is gonna look really good in my montage if I get these kills here with this Dragon Blade. I agree, there is a little bit of an argument that could be made that the blade may be a bit too over-aggressive, but it does kill the fight right then and there. And Rich, 1 minute and 45 seconds left. This is still very easily losable for Uprising Academy here, because they didn't full hold completely. They need to get around that 80%. They're running into a supercharger, a flux, and a window, and a bob. It's going to be very difficult here for Uprising Academy to run through every single one of those things.
Well, and the first thing to start with is that amplification matrix on this defensive side, but you have an early takedown onto Ultraviolet, countering, getting way fast in the back, and now B picking up pick after pick on that back line. That side angle that nobody was aware of, Square One killed it.
No one expects the flanking Ash, Rich. No one expects it, and certainly Uprising Academy didn't. And this is really do or die for Uprising Academy right now. You have 5 ultimates in your bank. You have to win here. It's the only chance you're gonna have, and if you don't win with these 5 ultimates, then this is can be considered nothing less of a disaster for them on this attack. On the other side, when you look at Square One, not a lot to deal with it. They still luckily have the supercharger in the bob, so they can stall a little bit as Uprising tries to make this push.
And Uprising, like you said, has a bank, and they're going to be spending all their savings, turning this corner, but still keeping a weary eye of that flank once again, with the Flux leading in the backside, managing to get a decent rise, but there's also Milky Man with a supercharger in the back, being uncontested at the moment. As Tap gets the blade, here is Dredro. This is going to be a cleanup between both Wayfast and Tap, doing a pincer maneuver of two sides, clearing off all members of Square One, the halt to secure that nobody's coming close, and you have Uprising Academy taking this to another map.
Uprising Academy leaves it a little bit late, a little bit shaky on that offense, but in the end, they just smack them with their wallets, and then they win the map off of some very nice ultimate coordination coming out from them. It was really difficult, I mean, for Square One in that position to get to a position actually where they could get it to last fight was still really well played from them. So for Square One, a pretty admirable defense coming out from them. For Uprising Academy, a little bit shaky on that offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when going into this third map now, it's going to be to continue refining your team play. There was a little bit of shakiness. I think there was, some hesitation on maybe trying to adopt into this Genji play. You had Uprising acknowledging that Square One was doing a very stellar job with it of their own. Now Uprising having to acclimate and adjust, which is great going into the second map, and now transitioning into this third one. I really would like to see them, like you said, just kind of clean it up, refine it, and just make sure that they have a lot of communication between one another to further, drive this home for them in this first of two.
Which is interesting because we saw in the defense, I mean, we saw.
True, we did.
But we did see that they were very coordinated in terms of how they were playing around the Genji. That defense looked very good for Uprising Academy. So now when I see this team going into Anubis, which is going to be match point here in that third map, I would like to see more of that. I want to see Tap stay on the Genji because obviously I think the Genji works a lot better than the Tracer did. Not to say the Tap wasn't a good Tracer, but I think the Genji just offers so much more in terms of just the damage output, the ability to have that Dragon Blade, and the ability to have someone that you can throw all of your resources into and have that come back out alive.
Well, and even further, it's really drawing attention. I mean, let's be real. I think for both of these sides, when you have that Genji in plain sight, you are very hyper aware of it. And which is what I think has really allowed the Ashe play from both sides to find this unique position. You had it from Square One on the defensive side, and then also on the final attack from Uprising Academy, vaulting up to that high ground position and getting a pincer with the Genji play from Tap. So it gives a lot of option because you're really just forcing your team to be even more hyper aware of where not only the Genji is and what they're playing and how they're playing, but the Ashe as well.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Spee even in that last defense for Square One where he gets a nice flank, gets a nice little 3K as well, and just stops the push in their tracks completely. And we do talk a lot about Genji, but I think Ashe, if you have an Ashe at the capability of someone like Wayfast, of Spee, who's coming in and looking very good as well, I think that is also a very big threat in terms of this matchup for both these teams. And I expect, especially going to Anubis, I don't expect anything to change with a lot of these compositions. Maybe there's a possibility Ultraviolet does bring out the Ana a little bit more often than something like the Baptiste, but I would expect this to stay mostly the same for this map in particular. Not really a map that offers any need to change into something else.
Agreed. Well, the one thing, because you made a comment about it and we briefly touched on it, we weren't too sure and how we felt about the confidence of going in with an Ana. But to be fair, there was so much value from multiple Bionades that were gained, and it still makes it reasonable, especially on a map like that. But it could be potentially still this double Baptiste on both sides.
Yeah, I think the thing about Ana is that Ana is a very feast or famine type of hero, where it's if you're not getting value with the anti-nades, not getting value by charging up your nano very quickly, it's just not going to do as much as something like a Brigitte, who is very much just like point and click, where it's like I just need to, I need to heal my DPS that are flanking with my armor packs. And not to say that Brigitte isn't really a hero that is easy, because there are a lot of nice intricacies with like shield bash whip shot, things like that, proccing inspire. But Ana is a little bit, like I said, more feast and famine, where if you're not getting as much value on the Ana, you're really not getting value on the Ana.
Definitely. But speaking of feast, you had Speed just get 25% of that dynamite and feasting on that early ult charge going into this. Nice Halt gonna lift up multiple members. Uprising getting some additional pick damage and leading with that usage early to try and counter this. And it's really gonna be a drawn out fight to rotate for this middle ground flank.
And since it is Anubis, Rich, we didn't talk about this at the start, but in these chokeholds, these walls are going to be very, very tough for Square One to deal with, or for Uprising to deal with, rather. As you can see, already having to force Immortality Field, and Uprising, Square One hit the go button on him.
Absolutely. Green means go, friends, and pushing in with King and that Mei in the back line just shredding through the sliver of healths that remain and just locking down everyone from just Uprising and resetting them entirely.
I am in love, Rich, with what Square One did there. They use a wall, they force out Immortality Field, and then they say, okay, we can just rush onto them through this corridor. We have another wall ready. We can force them to lock them in this room, and they're not going to have the sustain to deal with ours. So really well played coming out from Square One. Already taking a minute and 20 seconds off of this clock as we see Tap going into the back line, but gets out just in time.
Barely, and you've got that shot just missing, but at this point, it's not going to matter. Spee is going to have the Bob for this next engagement. A nice dynamite is going to force all of Square One in the back, and nobody heals. Unbelievable. Way Fast gets a double with a Dragon Blade from Tap in this tight corridor, and no one's going anywhere after that one. Team kill, the bell shall toll. And Uprising says, we gonna go to this second point, friends.
Yeah, Rich, I don't know if you know this, but Dynamite through window does a surprising amount of damage. And even with Brigitte there, even with Baptiste there, Spee basically just dies and isn't able to get healed. As we see the fight coming in, huge flux.
Multiple members, every one of the team, and forces out the Immortality Field, but the Halt brings most of Uprising forward, still able to evade. Bob actually gets a good flanking position where Spee has dropped it, but this is still not an over fight. The fact that you've got a nice takedown and an even 6 versus 6 right now, Brute's having to play very carefully up front and managing the shield because Uprising is not out of this yet.
No, and they're going to rotate through Dark, just waiting patiently. A lot of cooldowns being forced right now, like the Kinetic Grasp. And now finally Square One, or Uprising rather, do have this flank on the side of Square One. We'll see what they decide to do with it. There's a nice amplification matrix.
Oh, in the back, extra damage is necessary to try and push through this choke point. The Blizzard is available by King, holding on to it, not wanting to utilize it just yet. That will be a win condition fight here. And this rotation, actually, it could be forced out. Wall trying to separate a last few of the retreat, and the dash comes out in a follow-up with that Baptiste pick onto King. No Blizzard. This could just be enough for Uprising with sheer force of will to press back Square One. The Supercharger in the back attempting to counter this press from Boston, and they're still in a good position to capitalize on this.
Crandall also has the Supercharger ready and available. Tap so close to that Dragon Blade, but a wonderful Blizzard from King sections off the team from everyone. This is winnable for Square One.
Absolutely. Tap gets a pick in the back, though. Again, still all alone. No one to support when necessary, and this is a hold by Square One. Beautifully done, despite the chaos that Uprising brought into that fight.
It was all off of the back of King with that Blizzard, really not letting Uprising Academy take the reins of that fight, because if you look at their ultimates, they had these ultimates in that last fight. Tap was going to have Blade. Krandop had that Supercharger available to them, but the Blizzard was so well placed along with a wall that it makes Uprising Academy scatter around and they aren't able to take a good team fight. So now Uprising Academy do have an advantage when they come back into this next fight. They're going to have to make that advantage work.
Absolutely, the advantage was in favor of Square One with that win condition Blizzard, but now with the ultimate stacking up in the side position. But again, Spee will find an angle that nobody is anticipating, forcing the Immortality Field out instantly because the Orisa on the front line of Uprising falls low. With King still managing this high ground, has the advantage to drop down overhead, looking for a contest onto that back line. Halt's gonna come through, but no dash, not needing to play that far forward. Brute can actually commit a flux to this since so many members are clustered together to follow that Halt. And Uprising again finding the short end of the stick here and has to regroup.
And the way that Spee is playing these off angles is actually so interesting to me, Rich, because we don't necessarily see Ashe being something like a flanker, right? But the way that he's playing it, he's forcing out Immortality Field, which once that is forced out, you're like, okay, I can get a very easy flux if I'm Brute. I'm going to kill mostly everyone who's in it, or the team is going to follow up. The way that Square One is forcing out cooldowns, important ones, from the rest of Uprising Academy is making Uprising Academy not being able to take the fights that they want. They still have the Blade, they still have the Bongo. They have not been able to take a fight that they want.
No, and here you have the Supercharger on the high ground from Square One defensively. The Dragon Blade gonna come out, and there's that damage boost. Doesn't have it any longer, but the damage is already done. So many brought down, 1 minute and 20 seconds still remaining. And you're just gonna see King chase and chase for those kills as Brute and Speed take the last couple.
Again, Square One is the one who's the initiator. They, at this point, know Uprising Academy has the same combo they do, but if they are forcing it out of Uprising Academy, that's usually a win for them because they're gonna have respawns in a 1v1 fight. The respawn advantage is going to favor them unless tap pops off completely. So Square One playing this defense so well. Uprising Academy have 50 seconds left. They have to use these ultimates at some point, Rich. It is not good for them to continue to keep these.
No, and just keeping them for so long is really not benefiting in the long haul, but with the 40 seconds to go, that is necessary. You have Angelic gonna actually use the rally here defensively, and with the Supercharger to counter taps at this point, attempting a miracle on the front line, does work through the Immortality Field. It takes down Milky Man, but you've got Ultraviolet saying no more, my friend, with Brute attempting to give some assistance from the counter position. A whole team kill comes through, and that will be a forceful final push from Uprising to complete this round one.
Uprising finished luckily as well, Rich, finishing with that 18 seconds left. It's very important, meaning that should Square One get 2 points themselves, they are going to have another shot, where if they had gotten to 0, it would have just been all over from there. So well played from them at the end with a really nice blade from Tap. He gets onto the people in the back line, and while I think it was really well played from Angelic and Ultraviolet, really nice Immortality Field as well, it just isn't enough for them to deal with the Bongo damage, with the blade damage, and Square One ends up falling. But credit all to Square One, who realistically shouldn't have had that good of a defense. I mean, and Uprising was in the advantage for a lot of those fights, and Square One just played it so well. Like I said, being the initiator, being the one to not let Uprising set up and take their executes. It was Square One who was saying, okay, you want to do this? We're going to do this instead, and we're going to throw you a curveball. And Uprising didn't seem like they were ready for it.
No, not at all. And it's been now both on Blizzard World and Temple of Anubis that we've seen Spee, like you commented, taking those off angles and getting a lot of surprising, just almost on edge damage, where Boston is not, I think, playing as confidently as they would like, or if anything, they're being, I think, a little careless in some fights. They're really searching for that foot forward to lead into a fight, but I think they're just needing to really be aware that Square One is actually putting up a really good challenge for them.
Square One playing really well, and we're seeing it, Rich. This is the GT dive. It's been a hot minute, Rich, but D.Va did get some buffs recently, and Genji obviously very strong hero as well. Tracer's still really strong, so we're seeing a blast from the past right now against this Uprising Academy defense. And for Square One, you're gonna have to play this a little bit slowly. Not the most amount of dive targets available on Uprising Academy to really just annihilate initially, but here's the dive.
And the control and management of this coordination is key. The early damage onto the brig gets very low, but it forces out the Immortality Field from Uprising on this middle high ground. King still sprinkling in some shurikens just behind the shields, but again, the dive and coordination comes through in the back, with Spee assisting as well onto Way Fast. And this could be the domino effect necessary with this organized dive in the back. Tap at least able to take down Milky Man, but this fight is still ongoing, and such a scrappy one to boot.
The respawns are going to be slightly in favor of Square One, though, Rich. So if they want to continue this fight, they do have the respawns available to do that. There's the nano onto the Genji already, takes out Dredro, but Ultraviolet falls.
Absolutely, and this now consistent blade in the back in return comes out from Taps, taking down Ultra and King. False maintaining the front line position on this defensive side as well in that narrow corridor, and here's that subtle stagger to run down the clock.
Not as, it could have been a little bit of a longer stagger there, but you know, you take what you can get. And for Square One, forcing out Blade, not the worst case scenario, but they're on a little bit of a clock now, Rich. 2 minutes and 23 seconds left for them, and Uprising Academy are starting to get towards those important ultimates. That's going to make it hard for you to dive onto them. Supercharger, Gravitic Flux, Rally is the biggest one, and for Square One, you don't have Nano anymore to combo onto King, so it's just going to be a raw vanilla Blade.
Absolutely, and with the dive coming in once again with the Winston play from Milky Man, the self-destruct actually does get one. That tank out of the fight, solely relying here on False for this front line. Wayfast having to retreat back just slightly to look for a more advantageous position, and Brute gets a kill onto Tap. This is absolutely not what we anticipated, and Uprising switches onto a very quick engage onto this Wrecking Ball to try and get back quickly.
There's the Blade from King. He gets one onto False. Can he get another one, Rich?
Following up onto the Wrecking Ball, can't seem to do so, transitioning attention towards that backline flank. Already gaining 1 tick so far. Square One in a great position, especially with the damage by Angelic as the rally commits on the front side. Pulse Bomb in the back doesn't seem to get anything here from Wayfast, forfeiting it out, but there's already 2 ticks gained for Square One. They're in a good position at consistently picking off members from Boston Uprising that they will manage to now reset. Pulse Bomb gets very, very low onto Wayfast, and this is inevitably going to be Square One.
Square One comes up with it. Dredro using that rally there, thought they could win that fight, but unfortunately just aren't able to do so. And we have a little bit of a reset here. Angelic switching over to the Brigade themselves. No more GT dive, unfortunately, for us, Rich. Bomb available for Brute, and last time he was able to get Cran Drop, so if this bomb is huge, it could really open up this point.
Tucking it in the back corner, no one gonna be picked off, but it did zone and separate Uprising on this defensive side. The Nano Boost comes out onto Milky Man up front with an Immortality Field to try and compete against it as Tap slashes and dashes against the counterpart. King goes down, Ultra next for the Blade, but Brute stopping that dominant Blade play in the backside, and there is still some aggression left by Square One on this point. Sustainability and adjustment now coming out from Uprising. With Tap rotating onto the Doomfist, you also have this consistent fortification from Krandu to get a nice reform and will hold.
Brute still on the Diva. I assume after this stagger happens, they will switch back to something like the Sigma. I think the Divas was there only just for the ability to try and get something with that bomb, but now I think Sigma is going to offer a little bit more in terms of this team composition. Yep, there he goes, and we're going to come back into this fight, Rich, on this second point B with 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. And for Square One, you do have the Dragon Blade, which could be committed here, but you are committing it into a Gravitic Flux and a Amplification Matrix, so it's a little bit of a risky situation. Fortunately enough, we do have a Gravitic Flux right here.
The halt into the Flux allows that Immortality Field to be instantly used. The collapse comes through. Uprising more than healthy in that engage and forces back with now just above 2 minutes for a couple more attempts here by Square One.
And that was really nice from Uprising, understanding that they're all caught in this little corridor. If I flux here from False, it's going to get maximum value, which it does. And then Tap is just left to his own devices to slice and dice through everyone who have those low health bars. So well played from Uprising Academy, only using that one ultimate to win that fight, Rich. So their ultimate economy is looking much, much better as this round goes on.
Absolutely, and when you stack up that many, it is going to be a massive firework coming out from this potentially dark room position, which a lot of Square One has been moving to. A nice pick in the back from Tap with the dash reset despite the Blade coming out from King. What a subtle transition between the pillars, and that was beautifully done by Uprising.
Oh, and Angelic uses the rally, Rich, in that fight as well. And Uprising wins that off of the back of a really insane dynamite from Wayfast and the dash resets, like you mentioned, coming out from Tap, as well as the window from Aztec. 5 ultimates about to be had here for Uprising Academy. They have the sustain advantage. They're going to have blade advantage as well. For Square One, you have a minute left, and you have to really force out some ultimates here before you get to your last fight.
The ultimate tide has shifted, and Uprising is in as a stellar position to compete. Brute leading in with the stun in the back. You're utilizing the halt, but the Immortality is forced out by Uprising. Supercharger committed and rally. Multiple used leading into this fight, but still have 2 to stagger. Even exchange 1 for a 1, but losing King is critical. With now the press forward, the Flux lifts multiple members. Bob on the point. The Dragon Blade comes out from Uprising. Uprising, and with a blade and an Omnic, you clear this team once again. Square One not here. 30 seconds is all they've got.
But I wonder, Rich, was that too much of an expensive fight for Uprising? Square One's gonna get one last shot at this, and they're gonna have ultimates to work with here. Flux is online, Bob as well. Uprising, the only thing they're gonna have is the Amp Matrix. Something's gotta give here, and for once, Square One has the advantage.
Ooh, halt into that. Nice dynamite, gets a lot of splash damage, but you've got Brute leading forward with the Flux. As you said, getting one, now Speed getting a second. This is gonna start spelling disaster for the defensive side. On to Uprising. Has the respawn advantage to get back into this, but so many picks are coming through. There's the second tick, the overtime commencing. No one able to touch it. The knockback by the flag in round 2 is completed by Square One, and you are absolutely correct when Uprising forced out far too many ultimates.
The skin of their teeth, Square One is able to take that one, Rich. And too many ultimates is, like I mentioned, like it was, I don't think you needed every single one of those. You won the fight, as weird as it sounds, you won it too fast. They still had 30 seconds left to come back onto the point. And while I like the idea that Uprising had, where they're setting up their defense in the front of that area on point B, so you stop them from getting onto point so they can touch. You have to. That's like almost like a do or die thing, where it's like if you don't win that, they're going to be on the point. They're going to be taking up percentage. We're going to be a little bit split if that happens, and they just weren't able to do it for Uprising. But what a close series we've had so far between both of these teams, and I think 1 minute to 1 minute 18, 2-2 on Anubis match point is what we deserve, I think, from both.
Yeah, and it's going to hopefully be a demonstration of what this entire week has in store for us. I mean, if we can get matches like this all day long, I mean, my goodness, everybody should be supporting us here, watching this lovely, lovely
either
Contenders
way,
trials.
Either way, even if they're all 3-0s, you all should be supporting Tier 2.
True. Yes,
Tier 2 marketing, hashtag
right.
Support Tier 2, tier everything. You should be watching.
If you could only see the hashtag fingers that I'm demonstrating, but we're going to ignore that. As Way Fast takes us high ground with this Ash once again, and 60 seconds now for Square One to push on.
60 seconds for Square One, like you mentioned, Rich, and they're going with the GT dive again, like we saw. Ultraviolet here with Milky Man and Brute should be able to farm up this Nano much more quickly than he was if this was something like Orisa Sigma, so that's what you're going to be looking out for. It's the fastest charging ultimate Square One has, and it's one of the most important ones as well.
Ooh, Dynamite's gonna get eaten there. Nice defensive matrix coming out from the Diva play, and that is an early immortality field, and the anti onto Wave Fast is going to make this very difficult, but Tap still persevering through it, and the dash reset onto King. That was a great attack, or defense here, coming out from Uprising.
And that is one off the back of an insanely clutch immortality field from Aztec there. If he doesn't hit that, the fight is over, because then King and Spee are just going to be able to run through the entirety. 6 seconds left. Someone's got to touch, Rich.
Oh, diving in quickly. Milky Man on the middle high ground, but no longer has the jump. Has to rotate back to the point now once it's back online as the overtime commences. Also with the reposition by King in the backside, but Way Fast gets far too much damage, and the amplification matrix definitely helped lean into that. Way Fast still uncontested on this high ground, while Tap continues to deal with the front line. This constant just back and forth working so heavily in favor of Uprising. There is not enough bodies left for Square One to compete. The Primal Rage from Milky Man just barely keeping the overtime trickling away. It will not be enough in the end, and you will have now a swap of sides for an attempt by Uprising.
This is drawable, Rich. We do have the potential where we could go to
it
is drawable. For Uprising, I mean, again, once Square One loses that first attempt where they try to hit a really good nade from Ultraviolet, but it's stopped by Aztec, I think once that's done, it's very hard for Square One to win that, especially because once that immortality field hits, you just have Aztec is just free farming heals right there with his grenades and just with his shift. And he gets to 93% towards his amplification matrix, and diving into amp matrix is very difficult because you get blown up almost instantly, like we saw Brute just out of mech almost immediately as he tries to dive in. So well played on defense for Uprising and for Square. I wonder what they'll do. I don't think they will go opt for the GT dive because it's something that seems like Square One is more open to play than Uprising is, and Uprising just has to play it, you know, slow as they want and just make sure that they get a pick onto someone important. Because if they get picks in the most opportune times, they're going to have the respawn advantage, which is the most important thing, and long drawn-out fights are going to be in their favor.
Absolutely, and you know, again, to build on that, you know, not really adopting this type of strategy that Square One had, the biggest part is utilizing a tactic that you've got from Uprising with this composition. It was not easily taken when Uprising attacked the first time. So coordinating in this final minute and 18 seconds is critical.
Okay, well they just just give. Why are you giving speed 30? No, okay, actually,
40%.
Here's the thing. I actually don't hate it. I think they did. They might have done it on purpose to give Aztec amplification matrix charge, which I actually don't hate.
True.
So I didn't hate that. I did not hate that.
That is a reasonable outcome here. 50% already for that Amp Matrix, moving into this small side room where the middle high ground is still maintained by Square. Going to push forward Brute, looking to really get that Ricochet off the wall to try and break down some of those defensive shields from Uprising, but this slow and patient play, it is this final fight that will be necessary for Uprising to compete, and it's such a slow and hesitant play and barely escapes out of that accretion.
As we're looking for Uprising, Amplification Matrix is very close for Aztec here. It won them that last round. Can it win them this round as well? Speedo very close towards Bob Rich.
Yes, the Bob will be also just as critical, but still falling behind. The Amplification Matrix is up and ready. The window through the door. Spee in the back looking for a pick onto the Genji play from Tappa. Can't manage to get it. Dynamite in the backside to give some extra fire damage through that Amplification Matrix on the opposing side. But no one has been brought down just yet. Tap looking for a flank. Bob gonna try and compete as Tap has to be very careful deflecting as much damage to provide some space for the teammates. But it's a 1-for-1. King getting the Dragon Blade on the front side for Square One. Nobody going to get picked. And that will be a draw as we look to go to a map 4, friends.
I told you it was drawable, Rich.
It's Temple of Anubis.
It is Temple. Yeah, you're right.
It's Temple. I mean, it's Temple. I mean, if that's going to be the map they're going to give us in map 1, third map between two teams like this. I mean, I think we all kind of knew it. Let's be honest. And I mean, we're going to go into this next map, which is going to be Route 66. So. Route 66. This is gonna be. We're not gonna probably have another draw. I mean, I know that's highly unlikely, but
I mean,
we get to see a fourth map regardless.
Yeah, I mean, you can technically draw Escort, but it's so far out of the realm of like possibility that I don't even usually say that you can draw it. But that would be the icing on the cake of this series that we've had so far. And the thing about that last fight is I'm really interested if they did mean to take the Dynamite right at the window.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea that you are farming the Amplification Matrix much more quickly, and it just didn't end up working out for them. I thought it was pretty smart, but in the end, it was the Bob that really didn't let Tap Tap get into the back line and kill Wayfast. So, or not kill Wayfast, sorry, kill Spee. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could have gone either way. I think it was a smart play on my part. It just didn't end up working out.
I mean, I would agree with you. The fact, because you saw the race in favor of Uprising. You did have that. You had it about Square, but ultimately, when you've got that double shield composition, you're in that small corridor. Spee can't find really any value, and you're constantly taking damage on Uprising for Aztec to be like, all right, guys, I'm going to get this first. And like you said, got it, which was great. But with Spee getting a late Dynamite just over the shields, once that Amplification Matrix was there, that's when the Bob started to stumble across, and Tap just could do nothing. It was like,
also, yeah, I mean, it was also really good presence of mind, I think, as well, from knowing that Aztec probably at this point has, because, if you're Ash at that point, you're ticking up, right? You know that you're getting all this ult percentage, and you can be like, you can convey to the rest of your team, okay, they're going to have a lot of Baptiste ult charge. We have to be very careful around where we're playing and don't want to play in their window view. And in that last fight, you saw it. They didn't play where the window was. They weren't really caught off guard. So they had some really good ult tracking to understand when the window was going to come, how they could move around it. And they didn't end up dying and they didn't end up losing. So for them, really well played.
Absolutely. And as we enter in on to this lovely Route 66, we saw some Widowmaker earlier, and with this being a notoriously long sightline and great perch positions, could we maybe see it? I mean, it'll be interesting.
We definitely could. I mean, as we talked about a little bit before, Wayfast has a nuts Widowmaker. Really good from what I remember casting him in EU and in Contenders in general. His Widow, almost unmatched a lot of the time, and I think it is definitely a possibility that we see it. But Ashe also just still offers you a lot of utility. It's also still very hard to get a lot of Widow shots around a lot of the areas and a lot of the double shields in this map. So for both of these teams, I think Ashe is the safer play. But if you want to go for those highlight reel kills, you want to put something in your montage, Widowmaker is the best bet.
Yep. And I mean, again, there's just so much sheer raw damage that comes out of the Ashe versus the Widowmaker as well, which is still very critical, especially for how close these teams are playing in conjunction with one another.
So, no Widowmaker, unfortunately, for both of us, Rich. But we do, again, see the interesting wrinkle from Square One is that Ultraviolet is going to be on that Ana instead of the Brigitte. And credit to Ultraviolet throughout a lot of this. He's hit most of the anti-nades that he's tried to hit, especially in that last map of Anubis. So I think it can get a lot of value by the way Ultraviolet is playing it so far.
Absolutely, and being very cautious of the positioning here, playing around that pillar. The both supports, specifically Ultraviolet, looking for an opportunity. But because this high ground is obtained by Uprising, you've got Square One just playing very, very well underneath this gas station, looking for a chance. The Bionade lands onto the Orisa, gets the dash, but the Immortality Field is there to survive by Aztac, and a nice change up there. King gonna get brought down, and you still have Uprising on this defensive side, but another Bionade to level it out, making it a 5 versus 5 while this payload still continues to move forward. But ultimately, after a long, drawn-out, patient defensive hold, you've got Uprising taking down the remaining stragglers.
Yeah, I think King gets a little bit too over-aggressive there when he dives into the backline to try and kill the Orisa. Square One's still trying to make something happen off of the back of this fight, but they're really just giving alt charge more so to Uprising Academy, as you can already see. And Tap has his Genji blade way before King does. We'll be able to use it in that next fight. Luckily enough for Square One, though, and for them, Ultraviolet does have the nano, and here's a window coming out.
Absolutely, extra damage from that high ground position. The Dragon Blade held onto by Tap, waiting for the most optimal time to compete against this team of Square One, turning this corner of the gas station as a Dragon Blade comes out by King first, but immediately followed by Tap. Immortality Fields both expended here. It's going to be more in favor with the Nano Blade from King. Not by much, but still a small margin to take advantage of this. And a supercharger by Krandop in the back placed very well, so no one can take it down. So this extra damage is going to be free the entire duration, with Brute mitigating so much on the front side. The accretion comes out, and despite that well-boosted damage in the back, Square One still reaches this checkpoint.
And Uprising there use a lot of ultimates, Rich, to try and secure that fight, and they aren't able to do so. The Nano Blade from Square One, a little bit better than just the Raw Blade from Tap. And now Square One can very easily snowball this through Streets phase here, Rich. They do have a Flux, they have Supercharger as well, and here's the window.
Oh my goodness, early, but there's a Flux to answer, moving all members away from that window, so it's only going to get very minimal amount of assistance for the tail end of it. And this rotation on the high ground coming out by False is definitely causing some harassment to Brute. And this high ground position by Uprising is really well maintained so far and waiting to drop down, because both King and Spee are about to go down, but Spee's still alive.
King gets a little bit too close to the sun. Huge anti as well. Immortality Field is forced out.
Beautifully timed once again. Massive support plays coming through from Aztac for Uprising, keeping all of Boston alive on that high ground. And this subtle rotation around the bar is going to be very critical to push towards these last few meters.
But Uprising, though, they have the Amplification Matrix themselves. There's an accretion right through it, but Krandop dies somehow to Speed. That is not good.
No, but there's a nice even exchange. Wayfast is going to take down Spee, so that dynamite and pumping of damage is not going to be there immediately, with a Dragon Blade coming out from King, though. Getting a slash onto one, finding the follow, but no, gets flayed back by Dreedro, and the chase begins. The follow-through ensues. But this is still a pretty decent exchange here. The payload not going to be easily reaching that towards the end of this checkpoint, but with these final strays coming out, it's going to be a reset here once again.
With King dying, definitely going to be a reset, Rich. There's no way that Uprising can really lose that fight unless something miraculous happens for Square One, because they have such an advantage when it comes to those respawns. So resetting both. Nice halt accretion. Doesn't get the kill just yet, but setting up for this next fight. Window available for Angelic, but Uprising Academy, they do have the rally, so they can negate some of that damage coming through, and as well as a blade for Tap. They might not even need it.
But Spee gonna go down by False is critical to lead into this on the attacking side, but now with Tap going down 5 versus 5, Bionade again into a Flux to counter. There is still some serious assistance by Aztac in the back once again to keep that Bionade completely negated. And another hold here.
Ultraviolet is trying his heart out right now with all of these nades, but Aztec is just right there to meet him every step of the way. And Uprising Academy, again, still have kept onto this blade, one of the more important ultimates in this composition, entirely rich, and with 1 minute and 30 seconds left. And at the point that the card is at, Square One gets 1, maybe 2 shots at this because of how far the respawns are going to be away from them.
Oh, nice Hall Accretion again. That synergy is just so beautiful to watch. If only they had the follow-up onto him, but now with this rotation up to that high ground position through the stairway, False still going to play patiently on that corner, waiting it out, and a rotation back to that main street position, with Bob going to be placed actually overhead, landing onto the pillar, getting some decent damage on the low ground, but Wayfast barely surviving as the Nano Blade comes out. Tap gets one first, now the second, and the triple comes out. King unable to do anything, and that will be a great sustain once again from Uprising. Constant defense after defense.
Tap says, I don't need Nano. I just got my bongo and I'm good. From Krandop there, and Uprising Academy are able to stall a little bit longer. 40 seconds left for Square One. Absolutely going to be their last fight, but this is a point where Square One has always been good at throughout a lot of these fights, is when they have these combinations of ultimates. The fluxes have been really good, and you can bongo blade here. Immortality forced early. That is an important cooldown. Keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely, and you had that extra boosted damage by Wayfast through the Amp Matrix. We saw it earlier on Anubis, and now we're seeing here again, and the Flux in the low ground, knocking down multiple members of Square One. The Supercharger gaining no value, and King with a dream is not going to find any visions at all in his slumber.
That's more of a nightmare, Rich, I think, for
It really
King.
is.
Doesn't really, it's going to have to be someone to touch for Square One. They can't do it. The nightmare continues as they get halfway through Streets phase of Route 66, and I mean, credit entirely to Uprising Academy. That was a fight that they had a very difficult shot at winning, but a massive halt from Krandop forces out Immortality Field very early, and then there is a really nicely placed Dynamite from Wayfast that had completely annihilates Square One. And as well as that, on top of that, once they know the Immortality Field is gone, they could say, great, we have a free grid of Flux for us. Easy money, easy kills. King tries to blade, but again, more nightmarish than Dream.
I mean, come on. When you're false, you're feeling as if somebody want to go on a seesaw, because I know you guys want to go on a seesaw. And when you're in that small little archway, you may not be going high, but you're sure going to be taken down real fast.
Definitely. That is the Sigma ult in a nutshell right there.
It's so beautiful. It just reminds me of my young childhood days when I would always used to get either hit in the face or fall off the side of a seesaw.
Yeah, but I mean, when you went back down on the other side of the seesaw, you didn't lose 50% of your max health.
This is true.
It's a little bit worse, I think, in game.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, especially when you just have that inevitable look. You're just like, all right, well, there's the floor.
It always like sneaks up on you too. It's never like, you never know like when it's you think you know, but then you don't know. It happens like either before or after you think it will.
Like nightmares. Like King.
Exactly.
But we're going to open it up here. We're going to have some interesting vision. You got that Spectral Arrow to start out from Uprising, and it's going to be still a similar composition, nothing wavering, but Ultraviolet's not going to play the Ana this time.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing on the defense, opting for the Baptiste instead. The Ana did get a lot of value, but I think, again, Baptiste and Brig is really where it's at right now in terms of the support combinations. Even, you know, Tap was getting a lot of value with Blades that didn't have Nano stuck onto him, so I think Square One have realized the Ana, the experiment was decent, but it's failed, and I think right now Brig and Bap is better.
Absolutely, especially when you've got Aztec doing as well with these Immortality Fields, and there's going to be a pick coming out early where you don't have Ultraviolet with that Immortality Field soon enough. And this 6 versus 5 advantage here for Uprising is really going to rotate around this gas station, especially because you've got Brute on this side angle trying to get a crossfire. The False v Brute battle amongst both of them, using gravity as their strength. And at this point, you really just have Square One having to fall back.
Yeah, with Angelic dying that early, Rich, it's a lot of healing gone for Square One, and it's all off the back of Ultraviolet to try and heal it up, and Boston Uprising Academy are just running through Square One here on this first offense. No one is going to stop them, and they're going to have a pretty hefty time bank going into Street Phase where they realistically only need half. They only need half of the point. They don't need to go all the way to the end. Maybe not half, maybe like 3/4. My math isn't very good.
It's okay. I was just more laughing at the fact that that boulder knocked out the Genji play, because I just was thinking, you have a boulder that sharpens the blade. Well, this one just broke the blade. So
Imagine if you could deflect boulder. That would be.
oh,
That would
that
make
would be
Genji
pretty
even
nutty.
more OP.
That really would. I mean, that would just be for some major highlight montage reels, too, that you talk about. But as we go into this, you've got the amplification matrix to hopefully get some explosive damage in the choke point here, as that mining corridor will be overwhelmed with damage and continuing to keep this distance from square one to the payload.
Blades available for both of these teams. Unfortunately, Milky Man used his bongo there, his supercharger, which means that this Uprising Academy attack is going to be much more in favor of them.
With that favor, could be just enough to reach that golden box of victory to take this first win of Trials with the Flux leading into it. The Dragon Blade comes out by Tap with a supercharger, but does go down by Speed, taking down one in the mix of it. Bob doing some work on this high ground, having that advantage as the rally from Tridro tries to maintain it, but King obtaining the Dragon Blade as well to demonstrate the ability that they can, but not able to survive it, and now the rotations comes out. Spee onto the Tracer, attempting to get back fast enough as the cleanup comes out by Uprising, way fast, maintaining that narrow corridor, and the Tracer comes in with high hopes, but is absolutely vaporized. And you have Uprising managing to take this first 2 as we entered into a 4th map, friends.
Uprising Academy set the stage for the rest of this of these trials so far. Really well played from them. I was very impressed with Aztec, actually.
Yes.
He's the.
Huge.
We don't throw a lot of love at supports for this meta, because it's a lot about Genji dashes, Ashes on the flank, stuff like that. He played really. I was very impressed with a lot of his immortality field timing, the way he was using window against those dives on Anubis. I really liked as well. There's someone that looking through the rest of this, is I'm actually very intrigued to see more of them play, because I think Baptiste is a very important hero specifically in this meta, and he played it pretty well.
And I really just want to hit that home. I mean, we're talking about not like where you come in with a clutch play, like not just one. We're talking about multiple over multiple maps that we just saw complete and utter counter to beautiful bionades, mind you.
Yeah, that was That's actually, it's such a good point, Rich, that you're making there. Actually, is that if he's not hitting those immortality fields against those bionades, they're losing those fights completely. It's all on the back of the Baptiste when those are hitting, and it was really, really well timed and well played from Aztec in general. I am very impressed so far with what I've seen from him, and Uprising Academy looking pretty good. Tap can play Genji. I don't need that Tracer anymore, guys. It's fine.
Stop not playing Genji on control to start. False sense of security not needed. But anyways, we're going to go to a brief break here before we continue to see 2 teams go head to head. The next up is going to be Skyfoxes versus Malibu. So we've got some more Overwatch ahead of you, friends. Just go get a quick drink and some snacks, because this is definitely going to be another one you want to stick around for. Hello and welcome back, everybody, for some more of the 2020 Season 2 North American Contenders Trials. We are here with already a absolutely stellar game moments, well, a little while ago. But we've got now two more teams. I am Richrad here with Kenobi. And Kenobi, I mean, it's already been a day, and we're going into another one.
Yeah, it's been quite the day. We had a four-map best of three, so that kind of gives you a little bit of what we've been going through so far with the Contenders Trials broadcast NA so far. We had Uprising Academy versus, I believe it was Square One, and
Mhm.
Uprising Academy took that one. But now we're going into a little bit of a more unknown quantity with
Yes.
Skyfoxes versus Malibu. Skyfoxes, Rich, took a little bit of a hiatus from
Mhm.
Contenders last season, and now we get to see their newly formed roster completely. Whereas Malibu, we know a little bit more about their roster as we did see them play in the Fran Overwatch
Mhm.
Charity Cup rather, and they got all the way to the grand finals. They were swiftly 3-0'd by Scion
Mhm.
Esports, but still a pretty good performance from them.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when you're working through a bracket like that with some of the teams and players that were a part of that tournament as a whole, I mean, it's still something to really definitely feel confident about. And you touched on a little bit. We started at the beginning of the broadcast today saying that there's some interesting new players coming in for our teams of Uprising and Square One. But you're very right. Skyfoxes is in one of those positions where we're looking at a revamped team. They've taken a hiatus. What are they going to bring to the table here? What can their strengths and weaknesses be? How will the opponent like Malibu be able to challenge this new coming team back from that hiatus? And I'm really, really interested to see. I would not be surprised to see some of like what we've already seen, which is Genji.
Yeah.
But it's really going to be who can play it with not only just style but understanding of complexity.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about both of these teams as well, Rich, is the last time we actually saw Skyfoxes, it was versus Malibu.
Hmm.
Malibu swiftly 3-0'd them. So,
Yes.
a little bit of a revenge matchup here coming from Skyfoxes, the team that they last played when we saw them play in Overwatch, and then now coming in, returning to Overwatch Contenders with a match against Malibu. And I think you mentioned it a little bit with the Genji. Buck is a very good Genji from what I remember seeing him in the Fran community or the Fran Overwatch Charity Cup. I think it was a very well played in the mid fights. He was comboing his dashes and just the raw damage output that he was trying to have really well with the Orisa in Cedro. So I think that's something I'm looking out for is the battle of the Genjis really for both of these teams, because I think Genji, like we mentioned in the last series, probably one of the more important, if not the most important hero right now in these compositions that we're seeing.
Well, and you can even hit that point home in the fact of when we looked at Busan in the match between Uprising and Square One. We're going to come back to Busan now, starting off again for this control map between Malibu and Skyfox. The fact that you didn't have that from Uprising was a real deficit to them trying to compete against Square One. And going into this, I would really not be surprised at all to see a Genji v Genji matchup and really see who can outmaneuver and play their opponent. But to build, like you said, that Orisa just plays such a critical role as well in that combination too.
And since we're going to Mecha Base as our first match, maybe am not expecting something like the Ash Genji that we've been seeing a
Mhm.
lot of recently. This is much more of a brawly type of map where you want to really have that Reinhardt. You can rush forward with it. I think that's something May Reaper actually. Paris, for instance, and yesterday in the Summer Showdown played a lot of May Reaper on this map specifically. So Rush does come back a little bit in this map specifically, as we do see from Malibu. That's what they're going to be running. And from Skyfox is a little bit more of the more standard composition, except they're opting for a McCree instead of something like an Ash. So have that flashbang once the rush comes in from Malibu.
Absolutely, and it's a really great, heads-up play coming out with this aggression that's coming through. You can see Odd and just the entirety of the team with Fishcake using that mobility from the support, an early takedown onto that immortality field, not allowing any survivability, and this consistent drawback from Skyfoxes on this catwalk has to be very, very well timed. A nice halt as well by Faded to reposition. Atlas gets the first kill onto Cedro with the melee, mind you, from that Genji, as it's still I was gonna say it's only a subtle advantage, but as the dashes come through, there's back and forth between it, and surprisingly,
no.
is actually keeping a lot of value here, but Atlas, in the end of it, still doing massive amounts of work, and now this subtle, regroup stagger by Cedro as well.
Yeah, he's just trying to get percentage, but Atlas slices and dices completely through. Malibu takes out the Coalescence, which was really important because if that Coalescence continues to go through, there's a chance that Malibu sustains. But now it is Skyfoxes who are in the driver's seat. Blade available for Atlas here. Will he decide to go in for it right now? A lot of squishy targets that he can go for, mainly the Moira and the Lucio.
Absolutely. You want to dive onto that Lucio quickly to remove the utility. Nice pick onto Buck early by Aether. That's going to cause a lot of hesitation here by Malibu and can't afford to go into this fight.
And this is really nice positioning as well from Malibu right here. They're staying as far away as possible from the rush composition of Malibu, which wants to get up into your face, but Skyfox is abusing the fact that they have so much range right now and taking a really nice position.
Ooh, and you're going to get that amplification matrix by Fallen to lead into it. A Deadeye to take down Fishcakes. No need for that blade to be used here since that stagger has come out. And you really have a difficult chance for Malibu to recover from this. Buck uses a blade as well as Atlas. And Buck's actually getting a lot more value out of this with no assistance needed from the rest of the team, just constantly dashing through. And that's going to be a nice take back here from Malibu to start generating some percent of their own.
Yeah, Buck comes up really clutch with his Dragon Blade, gets more value than Atlas did, and sometimes it's just that simple where the blade that gets more value wins you the team fight. And once those kill picks were taken, even though Atlas was trying his best, there was a Coalescence from Archer that basically negated any chance of Skyfoxes really getting onto that point and winning that fight. So now it's Malibu who are at the advantage. Shatter available for Cedro, right into the shield. That is not one that goes in the montage.
No, not at all. Blocked immediately, and there's an Immortality field to survive as well. You've got Malibu also committing the Death Blossom here. Self-Destruct only really gains one, and this is reaching that last fight territory with a couple of ultimates, I think a little bit overused by Malibu.
I would agree with that, Rich. A little bit too overzealous with their ultimates. Luckily, they're going to have the Sound Barrier, which is going to be able to sustain through a lot of this, but Buck goes down!
Oh, the deflect on the Fire Strike led into the follow-through from Autumn Souls on the support role with now Frosted pressing forward, mitigating that damage with the Kinetic Grasp, trying to pivot around this corner, but the shield is no longer heavily reinforced with Archer pressing in to counter with the Coalescence down that choke point, getting the pick onto Faded and continuing to buy some time here for Malibu. The high noon return, but Shatter comes out to shut it down, and you've got Malibu holding Skyfoxes in this corner, and no one can touch that point in time.
That time Cedro doesn't shatter into the shield, gets a really nice shatter onto two members, secures the fight for the rest of his team. And it looked a little bit shaky from the start from Malibu, and Skyfoxes, to their credit, did play pretty well around a lot of the rush. But once you win a fight with rush, it's very hard for comps like the double shield that we're seeing from Skyfoxes to basically contest and regain onto a point. Because, I mean, you play a lot of Orisa, Rich. Recontesting and getting back onto a point with Orisa, probably not your favorite.
No,
my favorite really definitely when I played Orisa.
No, it's really not. I mean, literally, you just kind of hope and pray in some respects.
Right.
Even with a well-comped team. And now we're going to come out here on Downtown, though, which has a little bit more verticality in here. There's some opportunities from potentially high ground, and you're going to actually see a dive composition come from Malibu.
GT dive coming in from Malibu. They are going to be sticking with the Moira and the Lucio. Interesting that they're not opting for something like a Ana to give Buck that nano boot blade that we saw in the last series when we saw this dive composition. But Malibu has to play this a little bit closely to their chest because there's a lot of options for them to get blown up on their dives. You have the Baptiste, you have the Brig, and the McCree. They have to play very carefully, and Buck already, as you can see, taking down to sub 50 health.
I mean, having to play so defensively more versus offensively, wound up gonna get a great push on this side position, and there's already a takedown in addition onto Aether. Fishcake being right there in the fray, and despite that difficulty that Malibu has with this dive composition, their patient play and coordination has really persevered on this fight.
They still haven't won the fight just yet, Rich. It's getting close. Frosted going down should help a little bit more, but I think it's just going to be a matter of time before Skyfoxes dies and Malibu cleans up this point. Really well-played dive at the start from Cedro and Odd. They went in onto the backline, forced out Immortality Field. The DPS came along with them after the Immortality Field was gone. And here's a blade.
Oh, instantly in the back. Gets one early, finds the second here, but no, it's going to be Cedro taking the kill from the Genji play. Archer also going to commit the Coalescence here. I think, again, it's even though that you've got Malibu playing so well, there is a lot of overcommittance to these ultimates.
And Rich, they're spawn camping right now.
Yeah.
GP Dive is spawn camping double shield. When did you think you would ever hear me say that? But more time is percentage being wasted off the clock here. Primal ready for Cedro, and Atlas going down means more time taken off this clock.
Indeed, and especially now you've got this Primal range to buy even more time, but the kills start coming through. Autumn Soul able to finally shut down Buck with that shield bash to stun and slow any progression forward. Multiple members of Malibu have to fall back here, and it with this respawn could give a chance for a similar contest back on the point, especially when you've got Aether going down from Odd, but it's still going to switch over regardless.
Switches over, and Seadro goes down, so that means there's no way that Malibu can get back onto this point. They're going to have to regroup, get another 6-man fight, and while the spawn camp was fun to watch, it has left Skyfoxes with a ton of ultimate charge. They are in the driver's seat completely when it comes to their ultimate economy here. So for Malibu, they're going to have to make some eco pushes, force out some of those ultimates from Skyfoxes if they want to have a chance to win this series.
And with the dive in the back coming from the Winston, the great follow-through by the Diva play with the defense matrix to mitigate the follow-through damage. Archer actually gets one early on to fall, and as a self-destruct comes out by Frost, it does get Odd quickly and shuts down outside of the mech. And this pulse bomb by Atlas is still being held onto the Tracer v Tracer damage coming through here in the back line, also with the follow through with the melee as well. That's going to be Skyfoxes, despite that opportunity from Malibu and the dive, it's enough here for Skyfoxes to keep it.
I would have liked that push so much more from Malibu if Archer didn't use that Coalescence there. That was a lost fight. You could have kept it for the next fight because you forced out some of the more important ultimates that it's very hard to dive into, like the Supercharger, like the Amplification Matrix and the Diva Bomb. If you had forced those out and then saved Coalescence, it would have looked a lot better in this next attempt.
And with the next attempt being a good opportunity here for Malibu with the Dragon Blade getting one and the dash reset. The Immortality Field comes out, but it's not going to get much value as Seadro takes it down. There's the double onto Fallen. But Aether and Faded still doing some decent work maintaining this position and dominating against those few stragglers and low health values in the back. But Malibu actually still takes it and will switch it over from 81% from Skyfoxes.
Well, if you hit a blade that good from Malibu and from Buck, it really doesn't matter if you don't have a Coalescence. He gets 2 kills, very important ones onto the healers, and then after that, it's just a matter of time before Malibu is going to take those kills. So are able to win that fight off of just the back of a blade. They're now the ones who have the advantage when it comes to their ultimate economy. And where we're at right now, Rich, this is probably going to be the last fight that we're going to have between both of these teams.
Absolutely still being maintained on the high ground. Skyfoxes using that window, but now the drop down comes around the back. The stun gets onto Seadro and has to force out the Primal Rage and attempts to get much value with it, even though it was probably a little earlier than anticipated, and still manages to get Autumn Souls in the back and follow up onto the second support, but the kill doesn't come out until Archer forces the Coalescence. Aether at least doing one pick onto Buck, but it is not going to be enough, and all the while you've actually got it taken away behind, but it's only going to buy a few seconds worth of time.
Few seconds that might be available for them to get back onto this point. They do have a Lucio who can touch and a Tracer.
And the rally going to be leading in to reinforce that Doomfist play. The self-destruct gets Seadro, which is critical to allow an ongoing fight for this point. Frosted, though, out of the mech is not what you need Skyfoxes to have. Orisa on the front side, dropping the Supercharger. Faded, ready to get that extra boost of damage for at least the time being as the Pulse Bomb comes out in the back by Atlas. Not going to get the pick necessary as Frosted also leaves that mech. And this is still an opportunity, and Malibu is falling short here, even though it's still extended. The fact that Seadro is here is giving a chance to keep it even a moment longer, but it's still not going to be able to up with the numbers advantage from Skyfoxes.
Skyfoxes is winning this, Rich. They actually flipped, and apparently that flip matters so much for Skyfoxes in the end. Takes it right under the nose of Malibu, and now 96%. Is anyone going to be able to touch from Malibu whatsoever?
Over the top in the back, just able to touch it, but can there be a follow-up? The easy deletion on the Tracer with the Wrecking Ball and Doomfist, but no supports are close enough to keep Buck alive on this Doomfist to deal enough damage on the low ground. Finally getting stabilized and back into the midst of it all. With a knockback onto the Tracer, Pulse Bomb does get it with a sound barrier from Fallen to secure that nobody is going to survive and outlast any more of that damage. Overtime shredding away, and at this point it's just a song to be sung. That is going to be map 3 between Skyfoxes and Malibu approaching. That's
kind of wild, because if Skyfoxes doesn't take it out of the under the noses of Malibu there, Malibu has already won this map. An insane play, heads-up play from them to have the presence of mind to go switch the point, give themselves that more time. They had rally, they had the ultimates that they could use to come back and win the fight off of a stall. Really well played from Skyfoxes in a map that realistically, if they don't, like I said, if they don't flip that point, this is over, and it's already won over Malibu. So We're going to this third map now for both of these teams. Wannabe hovering that Widowmaker, very good hit scan player from what I remember in the Fran tournament. And Widowmaker, especially on this map, has a really good ability to just take over a game.
Well, and we saw it earlier. There were some serious plays by Way, and it was just now going to be an opportunity here for Wannabe finding a decent pick early onto those few members pushing through that small corridor. And looking for a side position here, and Buck playing very, very aggressive, looking for this dive with Seadro.
Yeah, what you're going to be looking out for here is who is going to be able to just get the sightlines away from Wannabe. Is Atlas going to go into the back and try and duel with him? As you can see already, Wannabe forced out of that position, so this is good already for Skyfoxes.
Absolutely, and the dive comes through. Can Skyfoxes continue to play this well and maintain with that immortality field? It does give a lot of survival with Seadro and Odd getting extremely low, and the fact that Autumn gets that pick onto the Winston, Seadro no longer there to assist Odd. This is going to start tumbling over, and Skyfoxes will be able to take this in a short amount of time as long as the focus fire is there.
And I really like that rotation from Skyfoxes at the start as well, where they go into that room where it's going to be very difficult to dive into, and in short enclosed area fights like that, Brigitte and Bap are going to get so much value for Skyfoxes. And you're also having Atlas go and deal with Wannabe, who is forced onto the Tracer themselves. So really well played at the start from Skyfoxes, forcing Malibu onto something that they don't necessarily want to play on this map.
And you really need to see Wannabe step up at this moment to have to transition onto the Tracer. You've got the dive in the back entering in from Seadro, but the fact that Faded's already got a pick onto Odd and demeching Odd makes this extremely difficult. This force out from Seadro on the Primal Rage does a fair amount here, but with the flashbang trying to neutralize and Autumn working in tandem with the ground control is really giving Skyfoxes even more survival against Wannabe, who is now quite staggered. The Dragon Blade and Wannabe coming through and actually getting a ton of value here to switch this back.
Very expensive fight though, Rich, for Malibu, and the staggers are still coming through for Skyfoxes. Now they finally end. Skyfoxes is going to retreat here, but going into this next fight, Malibu's Skyfoxes is totally fine with this. They have Supercharger. It's very difficult for teams to dive onto Supercharger, or onto teams that have Supercharger. The only way Malibu realistically can win this next is if the sound barrier is well timed enough, and if Wannabe can get a very nice pulse bomb, or you can just one clip Atlas, and then we just wait a little bit longer for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the full clip is there. I mean, the TBT happens every now and again. We don't get to see it too often, but when it does, it prevails, and you can see that Atlas is going to say, all right, we're gonna act like that didn't happen and come right back into this.
And now they're going to get the fight when it's even. So this is pretty good right now for Malibu after Atlas dies to Wannabe. You mentioned it, Wannabe has to step up, doing a pretty good job so far.
Absolutely, and now you do see Atlas hyper-focusing onto Wannabe, getting a decent amount of damage, but doesn't get close enough to get that full clip like we saw that Wannabe did earlier. Now just about to surpass percentage. Malibu in a good position to dive into this, going in the back line for the supports, but Aether getting a side position, and nicely done by Fishcake with the sound barrier to withstand that shot. The stun comes through, but no one there to execute onto Wannabe. Atlas does at least get a pulse bump onto the tank line and follows up onto Odd. But this is still not an even fight just yet. Skyfoxes will be able to dominate and transition down to this point and strip it away from Malibu, but there's still a chance with Malibu keeping in and going to commit the Coalescence. So there's just basically going to be some generation of the ultimate and switched immediately back to Malibu.
The supports come in super clutch there. Fishcake pops off on the DPS roll. I feel like I'm watching a Reddit Lucio with the amount of times he's in the kill feed. And Malibu, from the jaws of defeat, bring that back to a victory. You mentioned they did get the flip, so it's not that bad for Skyfoxes. But Genji Blade, ready and waiting for Buck here. We've seen so far he's been able to get a lot of value out of his. And 80%, if Malibu wins this, they most likely take the series.
Absolutely. Overhead, now in the dash in the back, looking for the supports. The immortality field is there and ready. The stun comes through and instantly shut down. Seadro to follow, still getting some worthwhile Tesla damage onto these supports, but the fact that the rally is coming out from Autumn is going to give some much needed sustainability, and this rotation back to the point allows Skyfoxes to take it back once again.
But there's kills coming in for Malibu, Rich, and it looks like this fight is still pretty even so far. Supercharger committed by Skyfoxes.
And Pulse Bomb being held onto for that critical
moment.
What is happening? The self-destruct, you are right. It's back in absolute fourth here. And Malibu is one of the most persevering teams I have seen through these fights, throwing the point just for a brief moment and immediately taking it back. Malibu, worthwhile win here.
Worthwhile, and did it by playing the Genji Tracer dive, a composition that we saw a little bit of in the last series, but this series really comes up and beats the basically standard meta composition that we've seen so far throughout Overwatch League and throughout a little bit of the tournaments we've seen from Contenders Trials so far. But it looked like Malibu had lost that fight completely. Like,
Yes.
and I was like, okay, Skyfox is going to come back. They're going to win this. But Cedro really well played with his Primal Rage, getting a lot of damage done on disruption, saving himself, and then going back in, getting a kill. It was really the coordination from Malibu seems like it is there when they play that GT dive.
I mean, it's also just I'm still blown away by both times that we're like, yeah, like this is starting to really going up, up. No, there's the Lucio Reddit thread, and then up, oh no, they're gonna come back, and it's really, really impressive. And if Malibu continues on this path, Skyfoxes really has it in for themselves going into this next map, which is going to be Blizzard World.
And I think what you mentioned when we were talking a little bit during that matchup is Wannabe needed to show up, and Wannabe looked pretty good on the
Yeah.
Tracer. It looked like once Widowmaker obviously doesn't work because Tracer's just in your face the entire time. And it's very difficult if a Tracer versus a Widow. If you're not hitting that first headshot, you pretty much lose most of the time, or you have to grapple away to a health pack, and it's just not a fun time. So on the Tracer, he did look a lot better. And I think for Malibu, I wonder, do they have a standard composition available for it? Because in France tournament, we did see a lot of their standard, but here we see a lot of dive, and
Yeah.
it looks pretty good. Diva, like we mentioned at the start of the entirety of the broadcast, did get some buffs
Yes.
along with the Genji buffs that we've seen recently. Maybe, maybe there's a little bit of ankling of dive coming back into the meta.
I mean, with how they're playing it and coordination like they have been keeping throughout both of those maps, mind you, towards the end, it's really speaking that way. And with Malibu, how they play it on Busan going into Blizzard World, I would not be surprised to see it potentially more so on the attacking side. And honestly, like you said, the fact that we've seen, more of this double shield type of composition from Malibu, I think that they're very comfortable and can probably still play that. But with teams that are maybe more comfortable to competing against that, if you can play a dive comp well and teams are not ready for that, why not exploit it?
Yeah, it's almost like kind of like the Chengdu Hunters from last season, where it's like they're gonna play something that you're not really expecting,
Right.
and you win just by having the surprise factor. It does
Mhm.
matter a lot, and this is the first time that we're seeing Malibu pull out this dive
Mhm.
composition because, like I mentioned, the France tournament there was a little bit more of that double shield Genji composition, but this dive looks pretty good.
Absolutely. And I mean, the interesting part too is we talked a little bit too about how big of a role that Ash is playing for, a DPS role. We saw it a lot more in the games prior. Though in this matchup, it's been something that both teams have kind of shied away with. Of course, because it's not really much of a dive centric type composition. But for Skyfoxes not to really utilize as well and go to this McCree, what's kind of the mentality for that? Is it really just solely relying just a stacked crowd control, or is that there's more outside of that?
Well, I mean, McCree obviously against Dive just offers a little bit more than Ash does because Ash you're really wanting to in those clumped up fights, combo your dynamite with halt, get value out of that way. But if Dive's coming into you, you really only have the coach gun to get away, and it doesn't really offer any utility for the rest of your team. It's basically only for you. Whereas if you have flashbang, once the dive comes in, you're able to live yourself, but you're also stunning the people from the other way and the other members of your team can do damage. So I think it offers more utility against dive more so than anything else that Ash would bring.
Absolutely. And I mean, with what we're seeing here, Skyfox is on the defense, once again, going to pick up this McCree, feeling comfortable in that role and utilizing that ground control to prevent the dive. Malibu hovering a little bit more of this typical composition that we were talking about, though. Something like you said in the Fran tournament that recently occurred. And Buck, I would not be surprised, once again, showing that Genji-Ash dynamic to really work in this attacking role.
Yep, just going to use the TP here to give them a little bit of time to get to those stairs and then going to dash in. So we're not seeing Symmetra, sorry, sports fans, but it is going to be Genji. I'm happy. I mean, I love seeing Genji. Genji's great. Genji is one of the most fun heroes to spectate and one fun heroes to cast. And for Malibu, this is a wrinkle we haven't seen from them just yet as the fight's going to begin right here, Rich.
Instantly, Halt pulls multiple members back, no dash through the center of it. An Immortality Field has to be forced out by Skyfoxes, and the retreat starts to begin underneath that mine region to try and cover themselves in that small corridor. As Odd, along with Cedro, rotate, but Faded gets the pick, and this is now a heavy shift in momentum, and Malibu has to flee.
Skyfoxes has to be a little bit careful here, though. They might have gone too over-aggressive, and Rich, I think as the situation here, Immortality Field is forced, and this is not looking great here for Skyfoxes.
No, Coach Gun gets the high ground advantage, now going to drop bomb, getting a decent double stun moving forward. The amplification matrix is committed by Fallen to buy some time for a regroup from a lengthy spawn position, but there is still a chance for Malibu to press forward, especially since Buck is on his way back.
A little bit of a scrappy fight there, Rich, all things considered, and it looks like it's going to happen right again.
Instantly up front, you've got the Flux lifting up 3. The supports go down. Archer gets the double with Buck claiming 2 of their own. And that will be a swift team kill and a control to transition into the payload.
I mean, it must feel really good for Archer right there. You just window up as you see the people going up in the grid Flux. 2 of the easiest kills you're ever going to see in your life, damage boosted. And off of that combination, Malibu is able to move forward, take that first point. They keep a lot of their more important ultimates when they want to try and snowball, like the Dragon Blade, but here's a Griddick Flux coming out from Skyfoxes.
Ooh, to counter, not going to get nearly as much value, though, especially with the Immortality Field there to allow Odd to survive through it, falling back. Kinetic Grasp also gave a great defensive shield and rotating back now. And just going to, at this point, try and reconvene towards this archway and choke point to focus.
Yeah, not sure why Wannabe was the one pushing cart there. Usually you want someone like the Genji there to basically have a way to get out and escape if you want to have dash or something, or you put your tracers there. Archer's going to come down, so now this... Actually, Skyfoxes can definitely spawn camp at this position. They have Blade available and ready whenever they want to use it.
And maintaining this high ground is going to further just demonstrate their ability to hold at the spawn position. Snacks Ramus is being a place for them to get some food in the time being until they can regroup as a full 6, but these picks keep coming through by Skyfoxes, only going to wear down the clock.
Wearing down the clock, Rich, but Malibu is starting to get their ultimates available and ready to them. Like I mentioned, a lot of the more important ones that they need to snowball haven't used just yet. Skyfoxes actually is caught up in a lot of these important ultimates, so this next fight should be a pretty big bloodbath. A lot of pixels you're going to be seeing on your screen soon.
And with Aether moving around the side, looking for a potential Deadeye to lead that ultimate usage, the Supercharger by Seadraw along with Buck in the Dragon Blade, but the stun comes through, shutting it down. No value gained. Skyfox is in a great position managing this narrow room with the amplification matrix. A Flux does come out, but there's a shield to block anyone pushing forward. Malibu in now a difficult position with this flank coming out by Frosted. The High Noon draws multiple members from Malibu into the small room once again, but Buck is here. Can Aether reply and shut it down as Atlas joins in with the Blade, but knocked back and well crowd controlled here for Malibu to still stick into this.
This fight is still growing, Rich, but Faded going down should be the opening that Malibu needs to take this in a very, very scrappy fight there, all things considered. Almost every ultimate, I feel, was used besides Frosted's Gravitic Flux. And now as we move towards point B, past the pylon terrace, we do have Seadro is going to have that supercharger ready and available, so the damage output is going to be on the favor of Malibu in this next fight.
And with the high ground position going to be maintained by Skyfoxes, you've got that amplification matrix on the low ground, trying to get 2 points of advantage. The crossfire there. Rise and fall onto that Buck position, but surviving through it. Just under 2 meters to reach this checkpoint, and it's still going to be Malibu dominating up front and cleaning up quickly despite leading with that Flux from Skyfoxes.
That was actually such a flex from Buck. He killed Atlas while he was in Gravitic Flux. Just dinked him a couple of times, took him out, and Malibu was able to have the advantage in terms of damage again because Seadro had that supercharger as well as the Genji isn't there, so it's just Buck left to free reign on everyone on Skyfoxes. And Skyfox is really bad right now in terms of the ultimate economy. This should be Malibu being able to snowball this very easily and could potentially just take the point right here.
You can see Buck playing on the high ground, does go in onto the Flux and gets double dash. Buck and Wannabe having a field day with that fight.
Pretty easy combination. You throw them all up. Genji's right there to slice and dice right through him, and Malibu takes that fight win. They won it quickly enough to where Skyfoxes will get another recontest before this cart gets here. And still, I mean, it is going to be difficult. Not a lot of ultimates for Skyfoxes to talk about.
No, not at all. And that Immortality Field has already been expended from Skyfoxes. You've got Wannabe with the Bob just in case for this last push. the numbers starting to favor Malibu and pushing forward. Bob's going to go to that side angle to get some decent sight lines onto the open tank body that is faded up front. This supercharger and amplification matrix being thrown for Skyfoxes to use, but so far out in the open. And even though there is a lot coming out, Wannabe getting a pick, this is still a reform from Skyfoxes with the respawn advantage.
Respawn advantage matters so much here, Rich, and it forces Malibu actually to retreat in a situation where they had a pretty good advantage, but it was actually Fallen coming back with a very well-placed amplification matrix that put so much damage onto Malibu. They aren't able to sustain through it, and then at the end, capped off by a nice blade from Atlas. Malibu coming into this next fight, supercharger ready for Cedro. Skyfoxes doesn't have one.
Oh, and the Flux gonna get 2 on that rise, and a great follow-up with the Deadeye, synergizing the Flux, forcing back Malibu. Does not want to commit to this fight, and Cedro barely able to get that shield up in time to keep the team remaining.
And that's a trade you're totally fine with if your Skyfoxes, forcing out the supercharger for your Gravitic Flux. Not too shabby from them. And Malibu coming into this, only 1 minute left, Rich. They get 1, maybe 2 more shots at this. Buck very close to that blade. We'll see what he can do with it when we get to this next fight.
Amplification Matrix leading for the ultimates. The Buck blade needs to come out quickly. Wannabe and Odd hesitating for the Flux. Could look for the synergy as well. With the rise and a potential dash to come through, there's already far too much damage on the back line, and the Immortality Field has been used from Skyfoxes. No more defense of a huge magnitude, and the Dragon Blade gets stunned, but still, doesn't get the follow through, almost manages to survive through it. But with the attention in the back onto Buck, everyone else from Malibu secures the completion of this first round.
And that's one of those instances where the blade doesn't really get any kills, and it didn't look the greatest, right? He bladed at 87 health, but the thing that he did is he forced out people into the positions they didn't really want to be, right? Where the Brigitta's back there, probably wants to be towards the rest of their teammates, proccing Inspire on that cart, but you can't really fight against a Dragon Blade like that. You have to try and retreat and stun it out, and while they did a good job stunning the blade, it didn't get a lot of value in terms of kill. They got a lot of value in terms of displacement and putting people in positions where they don't necessarily want to be.
And that's critical. I mean, especially when you draw out the flashbang, something of real use when you're trying to potentially recontest in these last few meters to go. And that's being able to put your opponent like Skyfoxes on edge as often as possible with how well Malibu is playing is only going to further their opportunities to really contest against this team.
And that's definitely true, and I think that's the thing that I really like about the current meta is that there isn't just one way to, win with Dragon Blades. Obviously getting kills is very good, but there are moments like that where you can use Blade to just like zone out and just know that I'm going to sacrifice my life, but I'm going to do this thing where I'm pushing people off the cart where they don't need to be. I think that's a really nice intricacy in the game of Overwatch that we have. And as we look at the team compositions coming into this attack round for Skyfoxes, they are keeping Aether on that McCree, so we did see that the McCree does do a good job of just making Genji's life absolutely miserable whenever he dives in, and he doesn't have Deflect. But you aren't offering that ability to have something like an Ashe. You don't have the longer sightlines, you don't have the Dynamite, you don't have a lot of those things that can really force out specific cooldowns like Immortality Field, right? Where we haven't really seen Aether do a lot of that.
Well, even further with Wannabe having the Bob for also another zoning or maneuverability tactic, just like the Blade that we talked about. That ultimate is critical. You've got Frosted already pushing in, Aether getting one onto Archer. And then Buck's just gonna say, all right, friends, I'm here. I'm just gonna do stuff. I'm gonna round about this corner and get a double and just continue to pump shuriken damage into this big target that is a shoeless man and manages to get the team kill and hold on the defense.
I mean, talk about the fact that you are, pumping out damage if you're Genji. 80% already for Buck. Yeah. Look at Atlas. Atlas has 20%. Atlas is not really in the greatest position when it comes to his Dragon Blade ultimate charge, but Buck is going to have it for this next fight. I don't know if Skyfoxes even thinks that he'll have it. It's going to be a fight probably lost right now for Skyfoxes going into this Blade from Buck.
Absolutely. Nice haul to at least pull a few, but there is still some response to that early positioning. And Wannabe playing very smart here to let Foxes move forward. And now the fact that they've turned this corner, decent early damage, and that Dynamo into a hole with the Dragon Blade. That is a fight conclusion from the tick, tick, and boom moment.
we talked about it a little bit going into this series, Rich, is that the coordination between Seadro and Buck is very good. The coordination there between Seadro and Wannabe, absolutely perfect right there. Force out Immortality Field just by the fact that you've hit a huge Dynamite, and then Buck can go in with the Dragon Blade, doesn't have to worry about really the Immortality Field whatsoever. Really well coordinated play coming out from Malibu. Skyfox is still trying to tick up towards their ultimates. Blade is close for Atlas, as well as they do have that amplification matrix. So the damage output is going to be on the side of Skyfoxes going into this.
And where it will be placed is important, right around the corner, with Bob going to be there to respond from Malibu. An early takedown again, but the fact that Atlas has been able to contest at least brings down the Genji, but Wannabe is the MVP at the moment right now. Not only landing dynamites, but finding these shots, and they are true. With odds saying I could do some work as well, friends.
I also thought that Bob was super smart from Wannabe there. Puts it, I mean, it's a little bit cruel because you're basically sending him to his death.
Yeah.
But you put it right in front of the window. He body blocks all the incoming damage, and then at that point you can have your shields back up. You have some time to get back your kinetic grasp. Really, I mean, Malibu is playing this so perfectly around everything that Skyfoxes is trying to do, and now for Skyfoxes, really what's going to save you here is a big flux, the supercharger, or the blade from Atlas. But at this point, Buck already has basically another blade himself.
Yep. By the time this engage comes through, Buck will have it just as much as Atlas. Immortality Field has already been forced out, and Frosted is getting deleted on this front line.
We're waiting just patiently. Skyfoxes again, just waiting for all of their ultimates for probably before they want to hit the go button. Because you have 30 seconds left, Rich. This is all you're going to get. This only last fight. Malibu has 5 ultimates themselves. This is going to be a bloodbath. Particle effects are going to be everywhere here.
And the fact that this is match point only raises the stakes with now that, again, the flux coming through, the blade from Buck to lead, already getting one on to Fallen, and that could just be the domino to start the chain. This roundabout positioning by Buck to chase. Atlas wants to counter it, but both, actually, it's only going to be Buck going down here, surviving. Atlas gets the counterplay, and in the midst of it all, you actually have Malibu being overrun from Skyfoxes, and that's going to be a team kill. And I think that the fact that you had Buck draw attention away to Atlas was unfortunate.
Yeah, he just saw blood in his eyes, right? He's like, I can get this kill, I can get this kill. Atlas actually goes and gets the health pack and then comes back and is able to duel with him with a nice deflect return kill. But full credit to the supports of Skyfoxes in that last fight. If that whip shot doesn't come through from Autumn Souls and forces Buck away, they lose that fight completely, and it's a full hold. But now they get the 2 minutes to go through these streets phase.
As the 2 minutes begin, the stairway to the elevated position from Skyfoxes is the doorway that they attempt to move through, but this nice fallback from Malibu is able to keep some survival. Now, drawback from both sides, gonna just regroup by the payload. No need to keep fighting in that choke point, and look for a new position by the pylon terrace.
Waiting, here's a halt accretion combo. Does get a nice hit onto Seadro, but he's gonna be totally fine. Flanking Gravitic Flux comes through, Rich.
Ooh, manages to rise a couple. There is the kinetic grasp to try and mitigate damage, but no, the dash is gonna be able to get the execution onto one, with Wannabe following through as well. Minute and 30 seconds, and now you've got Malibu in a prime position holding in this doorway.
But Skyfoxes basically have all of their ultimates that they need to push this through, Rich, as we do see a lot of the times when we've seen Skyfoxes so far is whenever they have a lot of these ultimates, they usually win the fight that's coming. So this should be, based on everything that Skyfoxes had, this should be a fight win. They have the sustain advantage, the damage output advantage. The way that Malibu wins this now is either an insane bongo blade from Seadro and Buck, or Wannabe hits some really critical shots.
And those critical shots need to come through. Bob is available, so at least that will be an extra asset going into this final fight. With the Immortality Field thrown out early by Archer, this rotation, Amplification Matrix by Fallen, actually not going to get nearly as much because of this rotation, and teams have swapped sides. Buck on the high ground, going to be able to use the deflect to survive through any shots that might have come through, but Wannabe being picked off is a real bad time, with Buck getting one, looks for the follow-up, the deflect on the high ground, but the stun comes out and Buck has to bail, can't stick up top any longer. 25 seconds, and Rally is actually forced out by Skyfoxes and will not be able to gain much value.
But Rich, everyone's so separated right now from the rest of the team. These squishies are going to get annihilated, and only 14 seconds left. These staggers are deadly for Skyfoxes, and Malibu hold. Skyfoxes get one last chance at this. Only 5 seconds left. Can anyone touch?
trying to get there quickly. The Hulk's gonna pull a few back as the Dragon Blade dash comes in on the return side by Atlas. Faded with the Supercharger, but does go down. Flux rised by Odd. Wannabe claims 2 with the Omnic and Dynamite for the 3rd. There is no way that Skyfoxes can maintain pressure. And as you said, Malibu had the short end of the stick for that last fight, but was able to use it and prevailed on the defense.
Malibu looks pretty good, Rich. Not
Yeah.
gonna be honest with you, that looks really good. The McCree pick, I'm interested in how that game looks if it's something like an Ashe instead, because while I do like the idea of having the McCree to just basically make Buck's life a living nightmare, Wannabe is nothing to sniff at as a player. Because
Definitely.
he had a really good game because of the fact that really he doesn't have to deal. He wins the range battle against something like a McCree. And so the McCree being there to stifle the Genji, I think is a good idea. I think also, though, you need to put some respect on Wannabe's name because he looked pretty phenomenal when he was just left to his own devices.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw and whenever there was any sort of pitfall or overextension or anything on the side of Buck's, aggression that came through and some bloodlust that we saw, Wannabe was still there to pick up what was left and able to follow through on it. And to be honest, even when Buck was having a field day somewhere else, Wannabe's like, all right, I'm gonna still do some work. I'm gonna do what I want. And
Yeah.
is definitely holding their own in addition to all of this Genji play.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was interested in looking at when this team coming into this tournament, because when it was Malibu in the finals of the Fran tournament, it was really just Buck being the one to carry them. And now you do have Wannabe here who is lifting their own weight too. And I mean, the coordination and that defense as well on Hollywood or on Blizzard World when they were basically having that defense that lasted all the way almost until the end and Skyfox got full health, the way that they were cycling their ultimates, the cooldowns that they were
Yes.
forcing out, the coordination between Seadraw and Wannabe and Buck
Yeah,
was
that
so
Dynamite.
phenomenal. And I really am impressed with Malibu so far as we go into the rest of these games for the next couple of days.
Absolutely. And again, for those that have been tuning in, that will complete our broadcast for the day. We have seen we focus specifically on Group B today, but we'll have a nice A and B group tomorrow. All throughout this week, we will be starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time, with the second match being close to that 8 p.m. marker. And again, for those that have tuned in, we greatly appreciate you being here. It was awesome being able to cast this with you, Kenobi.
Yeah.
We have many more matches to come, as I said this week. We will be finding ourselves casting later in the week as well. But like I said, thanks to our production and everybody, Kenobi, it's truly been an honor.
Yes, it's been an honor to you. Do you think we should give some updates on scores? Do you want to?
Yeah, lay it out. Lay it out.
Okay, so in Group A, we had Odyssey take a 2-0 over Revival, Karasuno 2-1 Saints, and then Scion 2-0 Hype Unit. That's what happened in Group A today. And then in Group B, you did see two of the matches that we had here, with Malibu beating Skyfoxes 2-0 just now. Earlier, Uprising Academy beat Square One, and then the match that we didn't see Kratos 2-0 Noble. So those were the scores for today's games that I have on me right now. And it's not something pretty. Oh, well, that's all of them I'm getting here. So I got all of them. There we go. Thumbs up.
Well, and I mean, honestly, I got to say, for all the scorings, I mean, we got the pretty good one to start off with between Uprising Academy and Square One. I mean, let's be honest.
A format best of 3? I'd take that. Yeah, I'd take that any day.
Any day. And as we said, we're hoping to find many more matches just like that for the rest of this week. So we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your night. It's been a pleasure. Happy gaming. And we'll look to see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern for more NA Trials.